Hello, Exosage here on the Sage channel, and I thought I'd give you guys a heads up on the future of space engineers. Marek Rosa, the CEO of Keen Software House, the company behind Medieval Engineers and Space Engineers, put up a blog post today where he actually talks about the future of space engineers, and well, he mentions a few important things that a lot of people have wanted for a long time, like planets. Actual huge planets, like oxygen in ships. So I'm just going to go ahead and read out his blog post. That way, if you don't want to go reading through it yourself, you can just listen to this. This blog post was made Wednesday, February 18th, 2015. So if you're listening to this sometime in the distant future, well, just take note, this was what we were once looking forward to, and now you're probably running on those planet surfaces. Anyway, guys, let's go ahead and get to this. Space engineers, planets, oxygen, DirectX 11 optimization, and multiplayer. People keep asking us, what is the next big feature to be added to space engineers? As at the moment, the major part of our plan focuses on long-term goals, which will take months to finish, and we don't want to keep people in the dark, we've decided to reveal some of them. Before I continue, let me emphasize that everything I say on this blog post is subject to change. The process of game development at our studio goes through multiple stages: idea, concept, development, testing, feedback, more development. And during the later stages, it's likely that some of the earlier stages get changed due to feedback and the experience that we gain later. Now what he's saying there is, of course, as they're working, sometimes they actually go back and reiterate on what they did earlier, because like when they finally decide to make Medieval Engineers, they're just taking some of the stuff they've learned from making that and bringing it back into Space Engineers, such as procedural asteroids. Anyway, carrying on. Planets and oxygen. When we started working on Space Engineers, we were not sure whether we wanted to add oxygen and planets. We didn't know if people wanted us to go this direction, and we also didn't know how challenging it would be to develop. But now we see that it's one of the most requested features, and we are also confident that we can deliver it. First, we will focus on oxygen in spaceships, grids. The algorithm will traverse through the volumetric grid, check if there's a closed or open area, and if the oxygen can expand or stay contained. We may use solutions already developed for conveyors. It's an obvious graph traversal / flood fill algorithm. The next stage will be planets, which will basically be asteroids ranging in size from tens to hundreds of kilometers across. We need to be careful with the expensive procedural generation here, and the simplest optimization is to avoid generating terrain for volumes that are too far from the planet's surface, because they are almost always full or they are almost always empty, and there's no need to run the generator there. Then we will need to add some sort of terraforming, oxygen generator, trees, grass, etc., etc. One of the open questions we haven't decided yet is how to place station blocks on planets. If we keep our axis-aligned approach and the player starts building a station at some place on the planet and then keeps adding blocks to it, soon the blocks will deviate from the planet's spherical surface. One idea is to allow rotation of the base block, and so the player could align the station with a spherical planetary surface. The other idea is to add a new type of block grid, one based on spherical coordinates. Also, we still don't know if oxygen will just be an aesthetical function. We need to come up with the advantages that players without helmets or suits would have, something that can only be done if the character has no spacesuit. Otherwise, nobody will take off their helmets, and the whole point of air in spaceships will be lost. On the other hand, we can't penalize players in suits, because that's how almost everyone plays the game now. A natural landscape generator, trees, grass, and the sky, are already finished, thanks to Medieval Engineers. So basically, what that is saying, as you've just heard, is that he's confirmed that their main idea for planets currently, they will actually be spheres, unlike some voxel-based games in the past who said, here's a planet, but really it's more like a cylinder, a flat surface that you can land on. These will actually be, at least their current plan is, spherical planetoids. And it looks like, going off of because they are almost always full or almost always empty, there's no need to run the generator there. I believe he is talking that farther away from the planet's surface, deeper into the depths of the planet, they're going to try to make it so that it's just one solid material, or at least come up with a new generation thing. That way it's not wasting time trying to generate and figure out what all should be in there. They're probably going to be figuring something out like that, I would imagine, similar for medieval engineers, so they might be helping each other out here. That way they're not spending time and time and time using their generator, basically using up your computer's memory, just trying to figure out what should be there. It'll be something simpler by the time they get this out, probably. Anyway, moving down, we have DirectX 11 and optimizations. During the development of Medieval Engineers, we created a brand new DirectX 11 renderer. Its main feature is PBR, physically based rendering, that allows us to define surface textures with a very realistic appearance. Additional benefits: multi-thread rendering, more efficient processing of generated geometry, e.g. grass, smooth LOD, level of detail, transitions based on screen space object dithering, no popping, so basically the objects will gently fade in and out. This new render will soon come to Space Engineers. Our artists have already started work on finishing our 3D models up to their final quality. You may have noticed that most of the models in Space Engineers are just temporary concepts, low poly, no textures. We are keeping the original art style and just making the models prettier. During this change, we will also reduce unnecessary polygons and add multiple models for LOD optimization. LOD means that objects in the distance are rendered in a lower quality. The positive thing is that we can keep working on this iteratively, block after block. So all this basically is saying, well, first off, the PBR thing he mentions at the top. That's fantastic. Physically based rendering is basically, it's a whole new type of rendering that's just now becoming more popular, and it basically tries to simulate how light would actually bounce off a surface usually. Space Engineers, having that is going to look a whole lot better. Another game you might have heard about this for is Star Citizen. They were really pushing that forward and saying, hey, look, we've decided to do this, and it makes things look a lot better. You'll see with some of the images I've put up here of their LOD models, their new models they're working on. It's fantastic looking stuff. I mean, it's just gorgeous. I cannot wait till I can also fiddle with modding that stuff in. It's fantastic. Anyway, they also mentioned the LODs there. If you don't know, LOD basically just means they have different models, and the poly counts swap out as stuff gets farther away. So it's got a high poly model, and then if it gets farther away, they swap it out to a lower poly model. Pretty cool stuff, and it helps with performance. Next thing is multi-core physics and optimizations. Havok is a physics engine developed by Intel, and we use it in Space Engineers and Medieval Engineers. Havok is able to utilize multiple CPU cores for its physics calculations. At present, our game doesn't support this, and some work on our side is required to rectify this. We will need to handle callbacks from Havok to our game, so that when they are triggered from different threads, they will not cause any problems. For example, when Havok detects any collision between two physical bodies, it sends a message to our game so that it can play a sound or render a particle effect. The other big piece of work will be extending thread safety in voxel polygonization and procedural generation. Right now, this runs asynchronously, so the game doesn't lag when large trains are requested, which can be a problem in situations when Havok needs real geometry to calculate potential collisions between objects that suddenly approach each other. Benefits of multi-core physics? Faster calculations equal less lag in critical situations. Ability to compute more objects in a world, e.g. massive count of debris during structural integrity collapse in Medieval Engineers. So guys, if you've watched my videos before, you might have seen I had made a video going, hey, look at this, why is my CPU utilization only at like 60%, yet Space Engineers is chugging here, it's not moving a lot faster. Well, that would be because of this. If the game wasn't multi-threading all the physics stuff that was happening, that's probably part of it here. So look forward to higher frame rates if you have multi-core CPUs, which most medium to high-end CPUs now have many, many cores, as opposed to older CPUs which had maybe 1 or 2 cores that would run at a faster speed. Now you have cores that don't run quite as fast, but you got a lot more of them. Anyway, moving on from that, multiplayer. The bottom layer of our networking engine relies heavily on Steam networking, and we can't use this on the Xbox One port of Space Engineers. The new networking library we chose allows us to better control message and channel priorities and reduce multiplayer lag and waiting periods. This upgrade comes thanks to our decision to port Space Engineers to Xbox One, and in future will lead to increased platform independency of our game engine. Thanks for reading this. And then they have their wonderful links there to all their Facebook pages and stuff like that, which I would actually suggest at least following their Facebook page or Twitter, because you will get updates on pretty cool stuff there. Anyway, that last bit there was just talking about how they're apparently choosing a new networking library to be sending information back and forth. I don't believe this means they're going to be moving away from Steam when it comes to easily joining games and stuff on Space Engineers and Medieval Engineers, but what it probably does mean is that if you've watched one of my most recent joint survival episodes, Aaron ran into some really serious issues there where his grinder wasn't working. The game might prioritize sending information about what people are grinding back and forth first, as well as their location, instead of maybe the way it is now, which I'm hypothesizing would be just bulk sending all the information, which was apparently causing some troubles. So you can see a lot of improvements are coming down the line in all this, from getting a huge update to the game probably within the next year, involving planets and a lot of that stuff, DirectX 11 on the optimization and the new final models for a lot of stuff, which will be coming, I get the feeling, bit by bit, but it'll be damn awesome to see that stuff loading in. And then, of course, don't forget the multi-core stuff, which will help a ton with frame rates and stuff, and also make physics rendering be pretty awesome. Oh yeah, and I nearly forgot to mention at the top there, they mentioned oxygen as well, so once again, I'm hopeful for food someday in this game because I'm fickle and enjoy the idea of having my little space farms. Anyway, guys, that's it for this. I have links down in the description below to the blog if you would like to read through it again on your own without me interrupting every now and again. That's it, guys. Thank you a bunch for listening, and I shall see you next time. Ta-ta.